Hey, Barbara Allen here, Wild and Woolly Wordsmith. Barbara Allen at WordPress.com, Wild and Woolly Wordsmith. Wild and Woolly Wordsmith.com. Been meaning to get back to this. It's afternoon of April 3rd. And been meaning to get back to this, but it's been crazy. There's even more coming. But I want to go back to that $2 trillion fucking package that they managed to just decide to print money to fix. $2 trillion. $2 trillion out of a fucking hat and fast. None of those arguments about where's the money coming from or unfunded mandates or we can't afford it or the interest rates or yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. I don't know, Flint water come to mind? Or homeless problem come to mind? The fact that we don't have health care for everybody come to mind? But boy, we could just pop up $2 trillion and pay for it later because it's important, it's a disaster, it's impacting our economy, it's impacting lives. More so the economy, I'm assuming, because that's really the only thing they care about. But all of a sudden, $2 trillion. Well, that's not going to be forgotten. In an emergency, a true emergency, a national emergency, that money can be had, and quick. And so it's not a matter of needing a new emergency. It's finally qualifying the emergencies we have as emergencies. The infrastructure emergency, the healthcare emergency, the infrastructure in poor neighborhoods emergency, Flint's water, healthcare. The money's there. Okay. And what the question begs, eventually, is what's the difference? Because they keep talking about it's just a flu season, it's just a flu season, it's just a flu season. Well, we know it's not just a flu season. But what caused that $2 trillion to come out of thin air? Was it because the majority of the people dying were old? Or at least they were led to believe. We know now that that's not true. That it's true older people and underlying health conditions. It's not both. It's underlying health conditions can trump your age. Okay, and older people are more apt to have underlying health conditions, having lived a lot longer, and thus having a lot more underlying time to have underlying health. But is that the reason? Because, see, the other thing is, as we know, demographics in this country are changing, and right now, of the children being born today and of the children being born, say, in the last decade, the majority of them being born are not white. But that's a new phenomena, fairly new phenomena. And that a very, very high percentage of the children being born here in this country 60 years ago, it still was a majority white birth rates that year, 60 years ago, and 61, and 62, and 63, and there on up. In fact, it was majority white people until, as I said, 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago, depending on how you count it. But, the kids that are alive now, when they come of voting age, the whites will no longer be a majority. But they still currently are today, or maybe today they aren't. Of voting age, they probably still are today by some counts. But that means that every day before, say, last year, was a majority. So, what that means is if the majority of the people dying are older people, then the majority of the people that are dying are white people. And white older people are the demographic for the Republican Party. I wonder if this disease had been focused in a black, brown, Asian, Native American community, if $2 trillion would have been available. If it would have been just younger voters who tend to skew more Democratic, even if they are white, even if it was still a majority white was dying, would they have done it if they were younger voters? And you say, oh, of course they would. Well, they didn't during the AIDS crisis. Because, see, the AIDS crisis wasn't killing any older people. It was killing young, gay men. Not a real high percentage if you're a Republican base. Oh, the log cabin Republicans are there. But not a real high percentage of the Republican base. They don't cater to that sliver of their base. So we have direct evidence from my teen years that had it been just young people who politically tend to skew Democratic, they wouldn't have done a fucking thing. Okay? The reason $2 trillion came out was because, oh crap, this is actually affecting white people. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's a pattern we've done forever. I mean, if you look at gun violence, youth gun violence, which is school shootings, African American, Hispanic American, Asian American teenagers have been killing each other with guns for a long time. But as long as white America could call it gang violence, they didn't have to do anything about it. Okay? He was gang affiliated. He was gang this, gang that. But teenagers were killing each other with guns that they had no business having and have been at alarming rates for a long time. They just weren't white folk until about 15, 20 years ago. Till, Kip Kinkle at Thurston, and before that, Brian Kelson at Springfield High School. Yeah, Brian Kelson, look him up. Nobody knows about him. But, yeah. So it's not a problem for this country, at least right now, and throughout its history, until it becomes a white problem. And it's been that way with everything. So the point is, we know now that $2 trillion is available, is doable. And we're not going to forget that money is available and it's gettable. And you can print your way out of an emergency. You can print your way out of an emergency money-wise. That's what we're doing. And we could have done that for Flint. And we could have done that for school lunches, for we've shown over time and time again that we'll bail out industry. This is the first time they've actually managed to throw, $2 trillion down and a nice big chunk of it's actually going to the people. So just remember that $2 trillion came from somewhere that 6 months ago the entire Republican establishment said it was impossible to get. It couldn't be done. Well, don't you love when the impossible happens? The thing about once the impossible happens, it's no longer impossible. And once it happens a second time, it's fucking mundane, guys. This is your Wild and Willie Wordsmith. WildandWillieWordsmith.com, BarbaryAllen.wordpress.com. See you tomorrow. See ya.